You know, it's the most common substance on Earth, but it's also, by far, the most extraordinary. It covers our planet, it makes up our bodies, and its totally ordinary appearance hides some absolutely incredible secrets. So today, we're diving deep into the chemistry of water.
I mean, think about it. Water covers over 70% of our planet's surface and makes up about 60% of our own bodies. But have you ever really stopped to ask, why? Why is this simple little molecule, H2O, the foundation for basically all life? What gives it these almost magical properties? Well, that's the mystery we're going to unravel today.
And here's the cool part. The answer isn't some super long, complicated list of things. Nope, it really just boils down to one single, elegant secret. And it's hidden in the very shape of the water molecule itself. It all starts with a concept called polarity.
Okay, so in a lot of molecules, electrons are shared pretty evenly between atoms, kind of like a fair game of tug-of-war. But in a polar covalent bond, it's a totally rigged game. One atom pulls those shared electrons way, way closer, making it slightly negative, while the other end gets left behind, slightly positive.
And this is exactly what happens in a water molecule. That big oxygen atom, it's a total electron hog. It yanks the tiny electrons from the two hydrogen atoms and pulls them closer to itself. So what you get is this lopsided molecule. It almost looks like a little Mickey Mouse head, right? With a negatively charged face and two positively charged ears. So what happens when you get a whole bunch of these lopsided molecules together in one place? Well, it's like a room full of tiny magnets. The negative oxygen end of one water molecule gets attracted to the positive hydrogen end of its neighbor. And that little attraction, that's what we call a hydrogen bond. Now, it's pretty weak and it's constantly breaking and reforming, but when you have billions of them working together, they are incredibly powerful.
And that's it. That's the secret right there. This simple property, this polarity, and the hydrogen bonds that come from it, that is the source of everything that makes water so special. It is the master key that unlocks all of the superpowers we're about to explore.
All right, let's unlock our very first superpower, a kind of life-giving stickiness. See, this attraction between water molecules really comes in two different flavors.
First up, you've got cohesion. That's just water molecules sticking to themselves, all thanks to those hydrogen bonds we just talked about. And then there's adhesion, which is water's ability to stick to other things, like the sides of a glass or the inside of plant cells. So you can think of it like this. Cohesion is teamwork, and adhesion is making friends with outsiders.
And this stickiness is what makes so much of life possible. When you put cohesion and adhesion together, they can do incredible things, like pull water from a plant's roots all the way up to its highest leaves, totally defying gravity. And at the surface, cohesion creates this kind of film, we call it surface tension, that's so strong some insects can literally walk on water. Pretty amazing.
Okay, next up is a superpower that affects the entire planet. Water has this incredible, almost unbelievable ability to absorb and release heat, which basically lets it act as a global climate control system.
The secret here is its super high specific heat. What this number really means is that it takes a huge amount of energy to raise the temperature of water. And on the flip side, water has to lose a lot of energy before it finally cools down. It's really stubborn about changing temperature.
So why does it resist temperature change so well? I bet you can guess. It's those hydrogen bonds again. When you add heat to water, that energy doesn't immediately make the molecules move faster. First, it has to get used up just breaking those bonds. So, in a way, the hydrogen bonds act like a giant heat sponge.
And you can see this effect playing out all over the real world. Just take a look at California on a hot summer day. The ocean is just soaking up a massive amount of heat, which keeps coastal Santa Barbara at a really nice 73 degrees. But as you move inland away from the water's influence, boom, the temperature just skyrockets to 90 in Burbank and then a blistering 106 in Palm Springs. And this temperature regulation, it also works on a personal level. When you sweat, the hottest, highest energy water molecules on your skin are the first ones to evaporate, and they take all their heat with them. This leaves the cooler molecules behind, which is exactly why sweating is such an incredibly effective way to cool our bodies down. All right, now for one of water's absolute weirdest and most vital properties. For almost every other substance on Earth, the solid form is denser than the liquid form. It sinks. But water does the exact opposite. See, in liquid water, the molecules are all jumbled up, with those hydrogen bonds constantly breaking and reforming. It's chaotic, but when water freezes, those bonds lock into place, forming this beautiful, ordered crystal lattice. And this rigid structure actually holds the molecules further apart than they were in the liquid, and that is what makes ice less dense.
Now, this might seem like just a fun little science fact, but let's just pause for a second and ask a really critical question. What if this wasn't true? What would happen if ice, like pretty much everything else, actually sank?
Well, the consequences would be catastrophic. No exaggeration. Every winter, ice would sink to the bottom of our lakes and oceans, and it would never fully melt in the summer. Over time, all the bodies of water on Earth would just freeze solid from the bottom up. That insulating layer of floating ice that protects all the aquatic life below, it simply wouldn't exist. Honestly, life on Earth would be almost unimaginable.
Okay, for our final superpower, let's look at water's incredible ability to dissolve other substances. People often call it the universal solvent, but this superpower, which is so crucial for life, is now facing a really modern dilemma.
So first, just the basics. A solvent is simply the thing that does the dissolving. And because of its polarity, remember those positive and negative ends, water is fantastic at pulling apart other polar or charged molecules, like the sodium and chloride ions in salt, and just surrounding them. This is how all the vital nutrients get transported in our blood and inside plants.
But here's the twist. Water doesn't just dissolve solids, it also dissolves gases right out of the atmosphere. And its ability to dissolve one gas in particular, carbon dioxide, is causing a huge problem as CO2 levels continue to rise.
Here's the chemistry of how it works. When CO2 dissolves in seawater, it forms carbonic acid. This acid then releases hydrogen ions, which, you guessed it, makes the ocean more acidic. But the real problem is that these extra hydrogen ions then go and scoop up all the available carbonate ions, which are a critical building block for so many marine creatures.
And the result is absolutely devastating for marine life. Organisms like corals and shellfish, they need those carbonate ions to build their skeletons and shells. And as you can see from the data here, when the carbonate concentration in the water drops because of acidification, the coral's ability to build its skeleton just plummets. They're essentially being starved of their most essential building block.
So, we've seen how a single, simple property of one lopsided molecule gives rise to everything. Its stickiness, its ability to moderate temperature, floating ice, and the very medium for life's chemical reactions. Water's unique chemistry is literally what makes our planet a living one. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? Are our own actions now pushing that delicate, life-giving chemistry past its breaking point?